All right, so thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Katie Marshall. I'm the director at McCroskey Arts Center in Grand Rapids. And that is where we are currently exhibiting the work of Jesse Dermody in his exhibit Strange Forms. And so we will be hearing from Jesse tonight about that exhibit and his other creative work. And really hoping to just have a great conversation with those of you who are here. As I mentioned to those who joined us earlier, feel free to turn on your video. That's just fine. We'll have a small enough group, I think, where it's not going to be too distracting. If you would keep yourself muted when you're not speaking, but feel free to unmute if you want to ask a question or if you'd like to otherwise contribute to the conversation. That's no problem. Let's see. Housekeeping. I do these once a month and then I forget in between. What are all the various things? I think that's about it. So as far as viewing the exhibit, I'll switch over to sharing my screen in a minute, so we'll be able to see some of the images from the exhibit. You can also stop by McCroskey and see it in person. We're in downtown Grand Rapids. And the exhibit will be up through the end of March. I believe the 27th is the last day of the exhibit, a Saturday. And we're open Wednesday through Saturday from 10 to 4. So feel free to drop in and see it in person. It really is, three-dimensional works are really great to be able to see in person, but hopefully you'll be able to capture a little sense of that from some of the images as well. So I guess at this point I will attempt to share my screen, and I'll just ask you to bear with me because I'm doing the whole letting people in and also trying to run the meeting. So we've all been in enough of these by now to know how it works. So I will get our PowerPoint going here so you can see some images. And okay, so here we go. Get things set here. So again, that's right. We are at McCroskey Arts Center. So here's first off just a little bit of a view of the gallery. And you can see our second exhibit in the Minnesota Gallery and back there too with the students from the middle school. But Jesse's exhibit is in our McCroskey Gallery. And there's just a couple of images of the works on display. And it's really transformed the space. We've had a lot of comments from folks coming in about just how immersive it is when you're in the space with all the pieces. And so I guess to kind of get things started, Jesse, I would just like to start off by asking, I know a lot of folks know you from your work as a musician with the Brothers Burn Mountain, and obviously you are a sculptor as well and a poet writing poems and lyrics. And I guess to kind of get things going, I would like to just know a little bit more about how you came to each of those art forms and I guess which came first, or how they have interacted in your life and how they have kind of developed with each other and as part of your kind of creative journey, I guess, to not sound too cheesy.
The first piece of artwork I ever did was a poem when I was 17. And I didn't know it was a poem at the time. And it came from, somewhere deep inside maybe my gut area and sort of came up and then outward. And I had to scramble for a pen and paper because I didn't know well enough at that time that I should always be prepared for, when a poem happens. So the poem first, I remember where I was. I was at a party and my father had just told me a story about his mother, and it moved me deeply because I had never heard these stories before. And just a little thing, like she liked, with her coffee in the morning, she liked Bailey's Irish Cream, and that set me off. That was enough for a poem. So I knew I had to get away from the crowd, and even then, instinctively, and kind of quietly in the shadows of a corner, write the poem down. And from there, I can clearly remember the first time I was induced to want to sculpt. I was 18, And my father, we had a nice garden in the backyard built into a hill, and there was a forest just behind the garden. So oftentimes there'd be acorns from the oak trees falling into the garden, and little sprouts that my father had to, oak sprouts my father had to pluck from the garden every season. But anyhow, it was the wall behind the garden was held up with railroad ties, which was a great idea. It looked good, except that the railroad ties are very corrosive to any plant life. So it wasn't good for the growth of the garden. And he figured that out. And he said, I think I'm going to buy cinder blocks. He was being serious to me. And I said, and I had the vision. I said, no, let me use stone. And from there, that was my first sculpture, was the backyard, sculpting the land with stone and plants. So just happenstance almost. I didn't expect to do either, but here I am doing both.
And so when did you start playing music, and did those art forms kind of interact at that point, or is that something that's kind of grown out of each of those?
I think at first the music sprouted from the poetry, because I wanted to become a better writer, and there has to be a sense of strong music for a poem to be any good. And I didn't have a strong sense of music initially, and I knew it. So I wanted to pick up an instrument and musicify, if that's a word, my poetry. And somewhere when I was about 18 in the garden, I saw a young fella, playing a djembe. And I said, that's the instrument, that because I liked it so much, the way it sounded, that's the instrument I want to learn on. And that's what I did. I within a few months, I picked up my first hand drum. And I've been collecting hand drums ever since, because it's so enjoyable and therapeutic, and it really helps poetry. I mean, to learn the rhythms on drums, it somehow makes its way into the poems as they come out, and makes them a bit better.
So with the works that are part of this exhibit, I know most of them have been created within the last few years. When did you kind of start making work from found objects, and how did that get started for you?
About 15 years ago, I just started noticing, with keenness, the beauty of different roots as I was walking along in the woods. And I said, boy, that looks like an eagle, or they look like different things. That looks like some fantastical animal I've never seen before, but sure would like to get to know. And I just started picking them up and taking them home, not knowing what I was going to do with them. And after a while, you hike every day, you get a nice little collection of strange looking things, all over the place. Metal, pieces of metal, animal bones all over the place. I mean, I'm fascinated. Like, I brought a prop. I hope you don't mind, but I found this doe skull yesterday, and I find this very fascinating to look at, the contours, the forms. I think it's just so damn beautiful. To me, it's not a morbid fascination. It's like a fascination of true beauty. I don't know why I find it so beautiful, but things like this, they're great to incorporate into whatever I'm working on. Even the word skull, I like very much.
So how does a piece get started for you?
Uh, good question. Differently each time, and very slowly until it's very fast suddenly. I much prefer to work from the unconscious. I love doing grunt work and sludge work, but it's always with an effort toward working from the unconscious finally. And I have the damnedest time slipping into that realm, but when I'm there, I really like to stay there for as long as possible. And it's that almost waking dreamlike state that I like to work from, because I don't have to make decisions. I'm terrible at making decisions. The decisions are sort of made for me. I'm not at the helm. Something else is. I'm just the worker bee, or the worker beaver, whatever you want to call it. I much prefer to be the worker than the leader. So yeah, I I generally don't know where they come from, but they come, and usually it's from a vision. I like to work from a vision that occurs. I was talking to the other Katie from KAXE about this, where I have a bunch of strange pieces that I like the look of, but aren't that much in and of themselves, all lined up against barn doors, walls, just lying on the floor. And I walk by them every day, and you know, I'll walk. Suddenly, I'll walk by one that I walk by 100 times for months, and I'll pass it by thinking, nothing there. And in my farthest most periphery, boom, I'll see the way it's supposed to be like, and I have to quick turn to make sure that the vision doesn't disappear. And I have to bring the vision that has occurred in my farthest most periphery into my forefront and center and memorize it so that I have something to work from, something solid to work from. If I don't have the vision to work from, I can putz around, but it's not going to amount to much. I mean, it might be some way beneficial to me, but it's probably something I'm going to dismantle later on.
So I get a bunch of questions that kind of come into my mind, but I'm not able to grab them in the moment. So I'm going to kind of veer off a little bit, but I'm hoping that other people listening are also thinking of some questions, because I would like at some point folks to kind of jump in a little bit. I was telling Jesse beforehand, I'm a very linear person, and this will probably be pretty boring if it's just up to me. So I would love to have some other folks kind of get in on this. But I guess my next question, just before I kind of hopefully open it up a little bit more, is just in terms of the last year, how there's been so many changes in the way we've been living our lives. And I'm just wondering how your creative process has changed, if it has changed at all in the last year. And yeah, I guess just some thoughts on that maybe.
Yeah, it's slowed me down. I'm sure it's for a lot of people, it's slowed us down a little bit. And I've I always, I strive to be in tune with the rhythms of the earth, and the earth is probably like the soil and the roots, and wildlife in general is slower moving than the mainstream culture that we live in right now. I think the mainstream culture is a little too swift, a little too quick to judgment, too quick to pass beautiful things by without really noticing them. And I suppose I've gotten caught up into that a little bit more than I would like because of all the touring with the music. Just hitting it, driving, coming to the next show pretty tired, playing, great to play, exuberant, rejuvenating, driving some more, getting really tired. And 65 miles per hour too often is too much for me. And I've been able to not hardly drive at all for months now, and I'm not taking it for granted. And I've gotten to do more sculpting than I have ever, because I have the time now, and and I get to record with my brother still. We get to create music still, so I'm pretty happy about it. With all the difficulty of the pandemic, there's something healthy about it too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna see if I can change my little view here. If any other folks wanted to jump in with any questions, I'll keep going. If not, but I'd love to hear what things other people might. Victoria, you're raising your hand.
Hi guys.
Hey,
If you can hear me, thumbs up.
thumbs up. You're good.
Okay, good. Jesse, my husband, and I are on a walk with the dog. But we've probably seen you in concert 3 or 4 times, and we're big fans. Our question is, where do you like to target your finds? Like, how far north of Duluth do you go? All the way to Grand Marais or more south? We're just curious about that, Jesse.
Oh, good question. I find them all over the place. When we're on tour, you know, between shows, I have my favorite spots, and I have to corral my brother into stopping for a couple of hours and just waiting for me while I collect materials. Different shorelines of Lake Superior are wonderful for driftwood. And any old little patch of woods will do for me, because there's always knots and roots and bones to be found. And I oftentimes just, you know, start off at home base and go on hikes. And I suppose I've developed a scatter method where I know where I've hiked before, so I probably have collected most of the good stuff from there. So I go to different places then, but all over the place. Nature, wild nature is bountiful for treasures.
I think as a follow-up to that, one thing we've been getting a lot of questions about is where do you keep it all?
Yeah.
I have a big barn that I have access to. But, I have just terrible, horrendous piles of crap everywhere. It is a mess, but it's my mess, you know. So I'm pretty proud of it too. And I can peck from those piles anytime I want. Yeah.
Mhm. Go, yeah, if you can just jump in if you have a question, feel free.
Okay. Jess, when you're making one of these, you said that you get visions and stuff. Do you know when it's done, or do you say, oh no, another piece would look good here, or like, you know, what is your process? What, like if I was doing it, not being an artist or anything, I just try to make it symmetrical and, you know, do stuff like that. Do you do any of that, or do you just let it rip?
Yeah, those are really tough questions to answer. I really don't know how I work. I'm usually more proficient at working when I don't know what I'm doing really. It goes back to, it's hard to explain, but it goes back to working from the unconscious mind. And there's a greater power there that knows better than me, and I'm not at the helm. That's all I can say. And I know when I like something. I know when I like something, and I know when something's not quite right. And I definitely know when I don't like something and I have to take it off.
Okay.
It doesn't get too much more intellectual than that when I'm working.
So it's mainly that you get like you work from that other person or that other thing that comes through you to do this. So mainly that's what your work is. It's not like you didn't decide today to make a figure like a man or, you know, anything like that. You just get those unconscious cravings to do these.
Yeah. And I figure if I'm given the gift of a vision, you know, I may as well put flesh to that vision as best I can. And it gives me great joy. It gives me the sense of healing. And that's what I hope to convey. That's why I even wanted to do an exhibition, was to try and share that sense of joy and that sense of healing that I personally get when I'm creating, when I'm in the act of spontaneously doing these things. That's all I know.
Could you do this with other materials, or is this like, this was what you should work with and you know that this is what you should work with? I don't know why I'm asking. I'm sorry, if anybody wants to just cut in on me, just cut in and I could, like, could you just start doing this, getting these visions with flowers, or is it just strictly like what you find in the woods?
No, it's with whatever you know. I've found pretty rough, dismantled old half barrels of whiskey, you know, and that can be really fun to work with too, where, you know, you take it apart and you can put it back together in beautiful ways. Any material that I find to be beautiful or ugly in a way that can combine with other ugly materials to become something beautiful, I'm all for it. You know, I carry a bag with me on every hike that I go on. I carry rope with me so that, you know, if I come upon something bigger, I have, you know, I can wrap it around there and have something to hold on to when I carry it. Yeah, I'm always, the, the world is a wondering place, and I get caught up in that all the time, and I get carried away, and just little things, stones, whatever, you know, sometimes a fallen bird nest, whatever,
Is
or
it, oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, like today, I went on a longer hike today, to try and clarify myself, because I'm not used to talking about this stuff, and I saw a hawk, and earlier on, soaring, and earlier on I had seen an eagle soaring, and I thought, wow, you know, the difference between an eagle soaring is so vastly different than a hawk soaring. A hawk has to flap its wings so much more because its wings are so much less large. But both, I don't know, that just watching hawks and eagles in the sky um, really inspires me like nothing else. Yeah, there are so many little things to pay attention to that are more inspiring than our mainstream culture might let on.
Does this, when you do this, does that inspire your poetry? Like, does it, you're making a piece, and are you, like, does poetry come into that at all? Or are you just really into that piece? Poetry's not in it.
No, you know, for us poets, like the Timothy Young, at least if he's still here, he's a wonderful poet. He's one of my favorite poets, and I think he would be more a righteous teacher about these things than me, because he's somebody who I'd consider a mentor. But poetry is always there. I'm a poet, so even if I'm not writing poetry, I am poetry. I'm being poetry. I'm like the sculptures. It's poetry still for me. It's just an extension of whatever is the source for the thing that makes the words come out of me. Sometimes, normally I'm a stumble bump. I'm not very good at talking. Normally I don't even like talking, and people have to put up with my silence. Especially my brother, my girlfriend, and anybody who's close to me knows that I fall silent really quickly, and words can pain me, whether they're my own or others, and it's no one's fault. So, yeah, poetry is always there. Poetry is saying that I love poetry isn't enough. It's not. That's not even close. Those are just words. Without poetry, my fire would be gone. You know, I probably would just disappear. I wouldn't be here anymore.
Wow.
If I can jump in there.
Please do.
Yeah, poetry is a way of life. It is, your whole life is poetry. And for those who are truly in living with poetry, we go in different directions and from other people. And what I can see from your work, Jesse, is that unlike so many other poets who they go upwards, they ascend and dissipate into some sort of spiritual energy that's, you know, kind of elusive and hyper. You go down more, and I love the fact that you have roots, and all of these sculptures are dark, it's like being underground. And when you talk about where your visions come from, they come from the deep underground of your being. And the fact that you are able to step aside and let the messages from the underground come through you and turn into this wonderful imagery, which is alive, you know. I love looking at that. And especially at this time of year when, you know, we're dealing with the sap from the maple trees. You know, they're coming from underground, the sweetness. Congratulations, young man.
Thank you, Timothy.
Ooh, that's a nice one too.
I'm wondering about there's, you know, there's kind of a difference in some of the pieces. Some of them are really clearly forms of some kind, or, you know, you could sort of extrapolate some kind of a creature out of it. Other ones seem a little bit more abstract. I guess I'm just curious, and I'm also curious about if that relates at all to the titles you give the pieces and how those names work into it. If there are particular people you have in mind when you create them, or when they've been created.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I do, yeah. It all works together, like different elements, different fluids mixing together. Like there'd be an ember reddish fluid and a sky blue fluid mixing together. They're different inspirations, and you know, they swirl around, and it has to do with people in part who inspire them, and that thing that's beyond me, you know, mixing together. I don't know how the alchemy works. I'm not that intelligent, but there's a sort of alchemy in there, like, let's see, the one in this frame that's on the rightmost, that one is entitled Josie, and it's for my girlfriend Josie, and part of it is inspired by just my sensation of her, and all my experiences with her, and her curves, her feminine wiles, her feminine savvy. I wish I knew the words to say how all these different inspirations combine, but they just do. And I have to work, you know, as quickly as possible once they come to me to, you know, screw them, glue them, fasten them together, so that they at least stay for 100 years before they fall apart again. Yeah, that one is Josie. Yeah. And inside those, I think those are called kudu horns. They're hollow on the inside. They're kind of in the center and up a little bit. There are two abandoned pigeon eggs, one inside each of the hollows of the kudu horns. And that white stone that's in the middle center up high, kind of in between those two horns, that's a ghost stone or an angel stone that I found at a secondhand store once. And then the thing just below that is called a moki ball. And moki balls are formed by iron deposits in caves, kind of the way stalagmites are formed. And they're only found, I think, in caves in Arizona and New Mexico, something like that. And the Native Americans who lived there and maybe still do, they used to and maybe still collect these moki balls, these iron formations, and they leave them out at night outside, so that the spirits who are nearby have something to play with. You know, they have these moki balls to play with. For some reason, the spirits like them, and it gives them something to play with so that they don't mess with their dream, you know, the natives' dreams too much, play too many tricks on them. They kind of, they're decoys, distractions. to give the spirits something else to do sometimes.
Anyone else want to jump in with any questions?
The spirits that you speak of, are you, is that what you're talking about? Is like the spirits come to you, or? I guess Mr. Tim Young could probably ask the question better than I could. But I mean, is that like you coming from the underground? Do you think it's spirits? Do you think it's, what do you think that is? I mean, it's got to be something. Look at all that. That's pretty cool stuff, right? I mean, like I don't have that. You know, I don't have any. So I guess that's nice. Is it almost spiritual, not in the religious sense, but
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, you chime in anytime, Tim.
Well, I'm going to interpret, this is my interpretation, Jesse, so
Mhm.
correct me if I'm, you're feeling something at a level that is beyond rationality.
Mhm.
And it's coming through you, through your feet, through your senses, through your gut, through your memories and dreams. But it's coming up. You mentioned how it comes up through the unconscious. Now, in our Western civilization culture, you know, we try and label things as spirits and ghosts and bodies, etc. But if we can get away from labels and realize that these are physical forms that are constructed through your imagination, and that's connected through the imagination of the earth and the darkness. Quite often I like the word imagination more than, you know, spirit, or some of those words that have, they've been tainted, I guess, in some way over the centuries. And these are manifestations of imagination. And, you know, I personally believe that, you know, what's in the earth has its own imagination. There's life there, and that life has its own imagination. That's why every plant has its different form, and every tree, every root takes a different path. And that's through imagination of that being. And you become the vehicle for manifesting some of these for rooted imaginations. As artists, and especially as poets, we love language, but we also understand the limits of language. And the more poetic you are, the more you understand that limit.
I bet.
That's why you're a musician also, by the way.
Yeah. When I write a lot, after a strong bout of poems coming, generally all I want to do is not write for a long time, and it comes back quickly usually anyways. But yeah, there's such limitations on the spoken word, and there are such limitations on what one can do with sculpting and such limitations for me personally. For instance, drumming and you know, writing new music. It's so limiting. Sometimes from the euphoria I feel on the inside initially, and it's very difficult to keep up with that inspired joy. Very, very difficult. So it's good to have more than just one art form to work on, and it's more expansive to have, you know, a couple things: drumming, poems, sculpting. That's good for me, you know, because when one thing goes a little cold, I hop to the next train, and it's a different form of art, and that one's warm, so I'll go there for a while, you know, and it helps the one that's gone cold warm up too. That's just how it works. And it's good as a poet to work with my hands every day, frequently, and to walk a lot too, and to get that movement, and to just do what is so difficult in a hyper-paced culture. Pay attention to what the heck is going on physically around my person. That's the most difficult thing, because I think everything else that's too fast pulls us away from our grief. And grief is the absolute fire to every inspiration that I have these days. Deep grief. Deep grief is the inspiration to my joy, and to every emotion that I have that goes deep at all. I was just thinking while I was sitting down this morning, I really hope I'm not talking too much. But
No, please.
oh yeah, well, yeah, and interject if somebody has a question or something more intelligible to say than I do. But I was thinking about, maybe this analogy has been made before, but you know, the sequoia trees are huge, and they have these little seeds, and the seeds require great heat to break open, because they have rather unusually thick shells. And the seed on its own can't germinate until it gets heated up very hot. And usually that's through some sort of wildfire on the forest floor, you know, running through, and then it'll crack the shell, and then the seed can germinate. And that's the way it is for me. I have all these artistic seeds in me. You know, I can hear them rustling against each other as if in a shaker, you know, like those gourds shaking around. But they're not germinating. I'm like, what in God's name can I do here? I have all this wealth, and I'm wasting it. And it's the fire of grief, because the shells of the seeds are too thick by themselves. It needs that fire of I'm this is how I'm explaining it only this time. But the fire of grief allows those seeds to germinate. And without the grief, I'd just be you know, kind of a hollow gourd that is good at shaking around a little bit.
Hey, Jesse, I love that, man. I love that. And it's so good seeing you. And I love to talk about grief, because that is so relevant right now. And I just wanted to share with you, my children and I go out and collect bones, and they were a little bit like, what is this about, Dad? And I showed them some of your work, and it was inspiring to them. And I love the fact that you honor and you praise these bones, because it is a form of celebration of that grief. And I just wanted to share that with you, and thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. Yeah, right on.
And my daughter's name is Maya, and I see your one piece named Maya, and I.
If nobody else has anything, of course, I'm interested in your use of, or your, God, I can't talk, grief.
Yeah.
Why grief? Like, why? I mean, do you think that that's at the root of things, or where is that coming from?
Yeah.
There is grief,
Mhm.
but not being an artist, you hear people a lot, oh, it comes from happiness or this or that, and you're saying grief, which is, I don't think for us normal folk that don't do poetry and art and, we just are living here, that strikes me. It just strikes me, not as anything, it just strikes me. Very interesting. There is a lot of grief. Do you think that life is grief? Do you think everything stems from grief? I mean, can you explain that any further? You might not be able to, and I might not be able to understand it, but. Are you just taking the grief from your life? Are you talking, or are you talking more? God, wish I had words. Are you talking more referral? Is that the word? Just general grief, generally.
Both. Grief is inevitable because I think like love is just a human condition. People pass who you love, and it gives deep grief. Or something happens in life that is tragic. It gives deep grief, and it happens to everybody. It's inevitable. There's that grief, and there's also a grief that goes right along with it. That's gifted us, blessed to us. Before we're even born, we come fully loaded, fully seeped in grief. And I think that's I don't know for sure. I don't have any kids of my own, but I do have my goddaughter, baby Vera. And I've been studying her. And she has the brightest eyes out of any human being alive right now. And I think that unpretentious eyes, unpretentious movements, that's part of what grief gives us. It sheds away pretensions. It sheds away blindnesses, dullnesses, and sharpens us to something brighter and something deeper. The earth has a lot of grief itself, and we're constantly, treading upon that grief, and that's why the tread lightly. Yeah, we're treading on the earth's grief. Let's be careful how we treat the earth's grief. We're careful around people who are grieving. The earth is grieving too. We should treat the earth in such a way as we treat those we love who are grieving. And these are not conclusions. These are just kind of things that are on my mind at the moment, and that I've had to painstakingly mistake my way into, and through trial and error, and nothing more or less than that. Just figuring out what for me is true and works, and what doesn't and isn't true. That's all it is. And trying to sort out the truths from the untruths. That's it. I wondered if it would be okay if somewhere along the line I recited a poem, before time's up. Just to, it's a grief joy poem. And if now is an okay time, I would like to recite it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This one is entitled Into Dusk Fading, and it comes from the earth and the sky and the trees and everything, and in specific from Southwest Wisconsin. Into dusk fading. Through the soft, persistent rain, the green hills of Southwest Wisconsin. Streams with the trickle surface, scintillated with the soft raindrops down. We persist. We drive on our way to the poetry of failing gray storm light. Into dusk, fading. Fading is how we learn the night, living every piece and part of death's turbulence. Grief makes amends with the heart through what we sense to the fullest. A love, not a sort of emotion, a willingness to breathe in the lily's orange, the flavor of a small sun, the buzz of a hummingbird hovering its territory, solid. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at a little bit. Grief makes amends with the heart through what we sense to the fullest. Yeah, there is a purpose to the pain of grief, and it's a really good one, a really important one, and something that can't be raced through. Something that I'd rather chew on for a while, like cud. And yeah, it's through the keening of our senses that that grief is allowed to be beneficial. That's one way that I might put it.
If anyone else has any questions and wants to jump in, I know we're getting closer to the end of the hour here. And also, Jesse, if there were any particular pieces in the show that you were interested in talking about, I know we referred specifically to just a couple of them, but if you had a story about any particular piece that you wanted to share, or like I said, if anyone else wants to jump in with a question or comment, please feel free.
Well, there's this one right here. That's on the screen right now. That one is entitled Jesse. It's the most recent piece, and it's my first attempt at some sort of self-portrait. It's a little bit self-deprecating, and I enjoy that very much. And it has I'm a Scorpio, and it has a Scorpio's tail coming off the front there, some sort of tail with the stinger. My brother always says that when I'm at my happiest, he envisions my scorpion's tail whipping around joyfully behind me. So he inspired part of that. Yeah, it's a earthen piece. Everything about it is going downward, even the folded wings downward. It's not a piece of taking off and flying. It's a piece of being perched firmly on the earth and in the earth, maybe because that's where I come from. And it's has a bunch of secrets that whoever this thing is about probably isn't willing to tell you what they are. And it has a backside too, and there's a bunch of bird skulls on the backside and other stuff. Yeah. Well, how close are we to time?
We've got about, we don't have to be exact. We've got roughly 10 minutes till 7 o'clock. I see, looks like we have another raised hand. Victoria, you can go ahead and speak. You don't have to raise your hands.
Oh, sorry.
I know you're a teacher, but.
So Jesse, I agree with your words that, grief is all over the earth, and within grief, there is love. Just like in the forms that you're finding, there are environments of insects and animals that reside there and into the soil. And it's our goal as humans on this earth to protect our soils and our lands, and to keep that all as pure and pristine as possible. So I agree with you. And one of my questions was, what was your sign? And you answered that as the Scorpio. So I'm excited about that. Another question I have is, earlier you mentioned your first drum. Could you repeat the name of that drum, please, for me?
Yeah, it's called a djembe. I have a djembe hidden right here, and I can I'll quick give you the deep tone and the high tone, and it has a deep resonance, which I love, and that's the mother's heartbeat resonance, and then it also has all sorts of tings on the side, the higher
Can you show
pitched tones. Yeah, sure. It's this is a fair-sized one, and it's pretty big to get that deep resonance, the deep tone. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll bring us back to kind of a group view here, but before I do that, I just wanted to once again mention that of course the exhibit, you can view it in person, and as you can probably tell by looking at the pictures, there is a lot to each piece, and it is you can really spend a lot of time looking at all of the details. So if you're able to stop by the Art Center in Grand Rapids, would certainly encourage you to do that, to check them out. You can also view the exhibit video online, and I wanted to be sure to say thanks to our exhibit sponsor for the month, which is Anderson Family Dental, and our supporting members and donors that help to make this possible. And I'm not necessarily wrapping things up, but I just wanted to make sure to get to that. And I think I'll maybe stop sharing. I can bring it up again if anybody wants to see a particular image, but if anybody feel like it's a little more conducive to, to any questions or conversation too, if anyone wanted to jump in at this point. So
I don't have any more questions, but I really enjoyed this. This was really nice. Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Larry.
It was nice to hear you talking about the doing, you know, where you're talking about how you don't have to think about things, and you're this kind of worker bee, and how that brings you joy, because that I totally understand that. With music, for me, I love to just be in the doing of it and not the thinking of it. And so it's just nice to hear you talk about that.
Mhm.
Jesse, I'm gonna sign off, but I appreciate, man. You're such a beautiful person. I just love watching you, listening to you, seeing you. It's magic, man, and it's so connected to the way you drum, the art, your words. You're always like right on the edge of something, but you're always in control, and I love that. I just love it. So much love for you, brother.
Same here, Tyler.
yeah, I really want to I just want to say thanks to everyone who joined us tonight. It's just a pleasure to be able to gather in whatever way we can. And I know I certainly had an enjoyable evening, and it stirred a lot of musings in my own brain as someone who, what was the term used earlier? Normal? I think I'd probably say average, but not that anybody's abnormal, but I don't often go down these creative pathways. So it's really fun to just kind of hear more about where people draw their inspiration, and just to get a little bit more of a sense of what has gone into these pieces. Because, you know, I'm lucky enough I get to spend some time with them in the gallery most days. So yeah. Any parting words, Jesse?
Yeah, sure. Boy, it's been a pleasure. It's great to see each and every one of you. Yeah, it's been a wonderful connection. Thanks for participating. Thanks for letting me share my work. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
It's just great to see every one of you. Truly great to see you. Brightens my evening. I think I'm going to go on a long walk now thinking about it.
Very good. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and Take care.
Okay, thank
Take
you.
care.
Very nice, very nice.